For years, Vladimir Putin has complained the U.S. and West have lied to Russia and have forced him to take action. You promised us in the 1990s that NATO would not move an inch to the east, he said just weeks ago. You cheated us shamelessly. This was how Europe was aligned at the peak of the Cold War, split between willing NATO allies in blue to the west, and in red, countries that the Soviet Union used brutal force to keep in line with them. But when the Soviet Union fell, these Eastern European countries, now free, aligned with the US and NATO. Russia's sphere of influence and its geographic buffer against NATO now shrunk considerably. 5 NATO countries even border Russia, and many now host US military bases. And Ukraine, it sits here, almost alone between Russia and the West.
If Ukraine became a NATO member state, it would surge the NATO front lines far beyond the Carpathian Mountains and far across the wider section of the North European plain, and place the new defensible front line across nearly 2,300 kilometers of open, hard-to-defend, flat land, the easternmost section of which would only be a little more than 300 kilometers away from Volgograd, which, if taken, would shut down the entire Volga River and cut off Russia's valuable oil and gas resources coming up from around the Caspian Sea from the rest of the country.
To understand Russia's strategy towards Ukraine, it's not just about the military aspects and the political aspects. It's important to understand the place that Ukraine has in Russia's heart, or in its psychology. Russian culture began in Kiev, and it's where what eventually became Russia was founded. I mean, it moved eastwards across to Moscow, but they still know in their collective imagination that the root of their culture is in the heart of Ukraine. And Putin wrote an essay pretty much about this, in which he doesn't recognize these lines on the map, these borders, because as far as he's concerned, Ukraine is part of Mother Russia.
President Biden says a Russian invasion of Ukraine would be the largest invasion since World War II.
This would be the largest, if he were to move in with all those forces, it would be the largest invasion since World War II. It would change the world.
There is not going to be any American forces moving into Ukraine.
Invading Ukraine from a Russian perspective is going to be a painful, violent and bloody business. This is probably the most dangerous moment, I would say, in the course of the next few days, in what is the biggest security crisis that Europe has faced.
Today, I'm announcing the United States is targeting the main artery of Russia's economy. We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy.